Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum ji.
Professor Naheed Usmani, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this first in the series of webinars that are being held under the Mohtarma Fatma Jinnah web page. I see the Vice Chancellor, Dr. Saima Hamid, is here. Madam, would you like to start off the webinar proceedings?
Thank you, Dr. Shahina. Uh, well, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome our distinguished guest today, Professor Naheed. I'm very grateful to you indeed. Fatma Jinnah Women University, being the first women university, is very proud to host today's webinar, as this reflects its mandate to add to the pool of empowered women. And I think Dr. Shahina will elaborate on this a little bit further regarding this webpage, because we are on a hunt for such personalities as your good self, and to provide them a platform whereby the young women can draw inspiration from you. Your leadership position, your role in health, indeed is commendable. And before I give the floor to you, I will make a humble attempt to introduce you. However, I urge that while you talk about the leadership in today's webinar, please do bring in your own experiences so that others can draw lessons and insights from this. Professor Dr. Naheed, of course, needs no introduction, but we will certainly learn a lot from her in her talk. She is a professor of pediatrics, hematology, oncology at the University of Massachusetts and the current president of APNA, with over 20 years of service to the association. And she's a very active, has had very active involvement. And every time she visits Pakistan, there are lots of people and physicians across the country that draw upon her rich experience, and we are constantly learning. By the way, Dr. Naheed, I am a medical doctor by profession. I went into public health. So hence, I know of you, definitely. You're an innovator and creator of new programs with lasting impact. And we can refer to the medical education and healthcare, different dimensions across it. But I think her array of achievements is immense. And she's played a big role in telemedicine and other initiatives taking the civil rights forward. You're indeed a very active member in US as well with the US Foreign Office, and you're advocating for the visa issues that the Pakistani residents have encountered. I think in the COVID times, your role is immense. And I think the list goes on and on. She has been recognized by lots of societies as well. So without further ado, I hand them over to you, madam. And I really look forward to your webinar today. Unfortunately, I am concurrently in another meeting. I stepped out especially to welcome you. I will stay with you for as long as I can, but please, my humble apologies right from the beginning. And thank you for being the first one to in our launch of this new initiative. Thank you very much. And a very warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Saima, Vice Chancellor, FJ Women's University, and Dr. Shahina Bhatti for asking me to participate as a woman leader that is involved both in US as an American citizen and as a Pakistani in developing. My basic thing throughout my career has been that I'm a physician first and foremost. And my passion has been improving medical education and healthcare delivery in Pakistan. So let me take you on a journey as to what prompted me in the path that I took. Every woman has to have a role model, has to have somebody to back them to develop as a person willing and ready to take risks involved in any leadership role. And for me, my role model was my mother. My mother was a physician who graduated from King Edward Medical College, college actually at that stage, in 1948, part of the first group of women and men graduating once Pakistan came into being. She hailed from a small town in India called Panipat, and she was given opportunities to pursue her medical career because of her brilliance. She topped in all of India, was gold medalist in matriculation, and then did her undergraduate from Lucknow IT College, and then was admitted to Lady Hardinge Medical College in Delhi. In 1946, when the Declaration for Independence was accepted, women of different faiths were given opportunity to move either to India or to future Pakistan based on their preferences. And she elected to move to Lahore and join King Edward from Delhi. And she was the anchor that helped the Usmani family settle in Pakistan because graduated there. She served in the camps of the refugee camps in Lahore, and then went on to develop a career in primary care in Rawalpindi. Uh, she was fearless. She took chances. She was compassionate. She always was very active in the Muslim League and was one of the women who led the marches for the creation of Pakistan. She got married, had 3 daughters, and she told us, our family, motto was that women should be able, she wanted us to have careers that we would be able to support our families and be independent, irrespective of who we were married to. We had to be responsible for our own family and our own achievement and be financially independent. So, graduating from King Edward, so we had a huge legacy in King Edward Medical College. And two other of my siblings also went to King Edward. And we did not have a choice, an emotional and intellectual choice, that we could graduate from medical school, get married, and be homemakers. We had to excel in whatever career we chose. Going to medical college in Pakistan in the early 70s meant that there were restricted women's seats in the medical college. There were 10 women who were accepted into King Edward on merit. And then over the years, another 10 joined with immigration, with army seat, doctor's seat, so on and so forth, so that we ended up 20 women in a class of 300. I think in Pakistan, women are objectified, so we were constantly under watch. And all the time that I was in KE, it was we women used to sit in the front, and all the men used to sit in the back of the class And their overwhelming, passion was to tease the girls sitting in the front of the class. And we were always told that if not to attract attention, no, if the boys got unruly, then it was our fault somehow, and that we had to be seen and not heard. And that, I think, is a prevailing, hopefully things are better in Pakistan as women are getting 50% of the seats. But in that period, it was very difficult because women were put into roles that actually deliberately dissuaded women for taking any leadership role. There was no way a female medical student could run for the class representative, etc. I did represent women in the KE, student council. Uh, and then after I graduated, we had to do post graduation, as that was my wish of my mother, and I proceeded to United States. I can't tell you what a relief it was to come to US, where I was not judged on my looks. I'm very tall. I am 5 feet 9 inches tall. So I was an aberrancy in the greater Pakistani, people, and was teased because of that. I was called, what was that big Coke bottle, that you had. And they used to call me that. I used to be always picked in any group because I towered over everyone physically. When I came here, it didn't matter what I looked like, what I wore, how I talked. People took me for who I was. And I excelled in my residency and then went into my fellowship in pediatric oncology. And here, my husband was the most supportive person. As I was applying for fellowships, etc., of course, being an international medical graduate, not, I felt that there were certain programs which would accept me and others would just exclude me because I did not have US credentials. I had an MBBS from Pakistan. My husband told me that if you don't apply in competitive programs, that means you lost. And if they reject you, then you lost. So there is no big loss. You have to apply to the best programs that you possibly can. So I did, and I got accepted into Sloan Kettering Cancer Center as a pediatric hematology oncology fellow. And that was eye opening. And that actually leveled the playing grounds for me because that was the branding that I needed, that I was one of the top I was in the top pediatric oncology program. And I literally could go wherever I wanted to go to pursue my career. As a woman, of course, I was married, I had children, but the option to give up the career that was hugely important to me. I am a pediatric oncologist that I feel very passionate about treating children with cancer and blood diseases. I have, I could apply and work all over United States wherever I wanted to. Because my husband was in the IT, we moved to California and I stayed there. But I have always felt that I needed to come back to Pakistan. During my fellowship and even during my residency, I kept in touch with my old pediatric professor, Professor Shaukat Raza, and he always told me that if you are going to come to Pakistan, you have to become a subspecialist because we lacked the subspecialists. And he guided me into going into pediatric hemonc. When I finished my fellowship, he told me that, well, even before I finished, after year one, he told me that I have done 1 year of clinical fellowship. I should come and join King Edward. But at that point, I was so heavily involved in my fellowship that I didn't want to quit. I said, no, I'll wait, I'll finish my training that I'm supposed to do, and then I can make a transition to Pakistan. So I finished my 3 years fellowship, moved to California, and then I was contacted by Dr. Nosharwa Barki, who was the medical director of an upcoming hospital in Lahore called Shaukat Khanum Cancer Hospital. And he asked me if I would be interested in moving back to Pakistan. So, in a highly specialized field, I had big concerns about joining a public university because of lack of resources. And being my mother's daughter, I wanted to be in a program where I could treat both rich and poor patients, because the stories I had heard of cancer treatment in Pakistan was that there was a very high rate of abandonment of treatment because people ran out of money, they didn't have resources or the wherewithal to continue the whole treatment process. I was promised that if I joined Shaukat Khanum Cancer Hospital, I could treat all comers, irrespective of their ability to pay, and that there would be no difference between the affording and the non-affording patients, and I will have nothing to do with choosing, you know, patients based on their ability to pay. And I would be able to treat them on the same protocols that I designed based on the standard of therapy in United States. So that was hugely important to me. I discussed with my husband, and we as a family in 1994, I gave up my very lucrative practice in California and I moved to Lahore to join Shaukat Khanum. Now, you know, in your journey through life, you have many opportunities and many challenges. And I think Shaukat Khanum presented the biggest opportunity I had and the biggest challenge I had. I had a blank canvas that I was writing on, and I set up the pediatric oncology program at Shaukat Khanum. I worked there for 5 years. I think this was the mountain that I climbed, and I have never done anything in my life that compares to the impact I had during those 5 years. It was the most moving, the most exciting, the most challenging, and the most fulfilling part of my career. By then, I had 3 children, and they were in schools in Lahore. I was very clear that they were American children, but they needed to go to school in Pakistani schools similar to the ones that I and my husband had gone to. So I did not put them in the Lahore American school. I put them in the schools, that all my other physician friends were sending them to. And they adapted, and they, to this date, have a very good idea of who they are, where do they belong. They imbibed the Pakistaniyat that is so important to really, for us as immigrant community, to know who we are in United States. So they have American persona, but they are very much Pakistani Americans. After 5 years, I moved back to United States. I joined University of Massachusetts, starting off as an assistant professor because in my academic career, I had given up 5 years of my, academic progression. But I've been at UMass and, I've worked there and started different programs there. And over a period of 12 years, I progressed to where I was made a full professor in 2017. Uh, I have always been involved with the greater Pakistani community in the United States. And I started with New England. When I moved back from Lahore, I found out that 9/11 happened. And as you know, in 9/11, Muslims were objectified, made into others. And I realized that Pakistani Americans and Pakistani American physicians were only being recognized because with their Islamic centers. So we were only categorized as being Muslims, and we have a lot of contributions to the healthcare all over United States and in Massachusetts. So when I was in 2002, FBI came calling on me, asking me if I had treated, Pakistani patients in United States. And whether I told them that I was only treating pediatric patients and that there is a HIPAA rule right now that you cannot talk about your patients, there's a Privacy Act. They insisted that the FBI, they had every right to look into all medical records and everything. And that they wanted to know if I had treated anybody suspicious, which was totally ridiculous. And I felt very upset. I found it insulting. I found it that as I'm a physician, first and foremost, I have no political affiliations either in Pakistan at that point or here. And that just because I was a Pakistani physician working in academia, and because I had worked in Pakistan for 5 years, they pinpointed me and tried to harass me and to accuse me of things that were totally unrealistic and were not based. So my reaction was that, my goodness, I have to make sure that I have other professionals standing behind me. This was not just happening to me, it was happening to many physicians of Pakistani descent all across United States. So in New England, I formed the New England chapter of APNA so that we could be recognized as a apolitical group of professionals who could present themselves and then have each other's back. So in 2003, we formed the New England chapter, and I was the president for 3 years. And as you know, during my presidency, the 2005 earthquake happened in the northwest, in the KPK area. And we suddenly realized that as a group of physicians, we had a huge influence within our community. So we did fundraisers and we raised a large amount of money and we provided a lot of help in, in Balakot and Muzaffarabad, and I physically went a couple of times there. Our physicians volunteered there. All three of my children went to Muzaffarabad to help out, and that was very important. It also brought me into the limelight of the National Association of Physicians of Pakistani descent of North America. In 2007, based on my experiences of establishing the Shaukat Khanum Pediatric Oncology Program, I was asked by the president of APNA to set up a committee involved in improving healthcare and education in Pakistan. So I became the founding chair of a committee called Medical Education, Research and Transfer of Technology Committee of APNA, and I chaired that for 5 years or 7 years. Uh, and it is now a huge enterprise. Over the last, 13 years, it has a life of its own. We have been busy in improving many different things in Pakistan. We were able to advocate for establishing pediatric oncology as a subspecialty in Pakistan. So now we have training programs. Whereas when I was in Pakistan in 1994, there were three pediatric oncologists for the whole country. Now there are hundreds. And there are programs not just at Aga Khan or Chakat Khanam or PIMS, there are programs all over the country, including Multan and, uh, you know, uh, Faisalabad and multiple programs in Karachi and Lahore and Children's Hospital and Mayo. So a lot more patients with cancer. A lot of children with cancer are being treated throughout. We advocated for a critical care fellowship for emergency medicine because there were a lot of bomb blasts and, of course, the earthquakes and the floods and the calamities Pakistan periodically goes through. So we wanted the emergency medicine to be revamped, and it is in the process. And currently, we are helping developing primary care throughout Pakistan so that there is family medicine recognized as a specialty, not just by college, but by different medical universities, so that we have academic primary care programs as well as all the general practitioners have appropriate training and coursework so that when they treat Pakistani patients, whether for hypertension or diabetes, they are doing on evidence-based medicine. So that is an ongoing process that we are doing. Once I remained focused on medical education in Pakistan throughout the time, but once I reached my goal of becoming a professor, I did not want anything to derail my academic progression at UMass. That's when I decided that I needed to focus APNA more towards the basic mission of APNA, which is improving healthcare and medical education, both here and in Pakistan, here in US and in Pakistan. That is part of the core mission of APNA and my passion. So I decided that I was in a situation where my children were in their careers, they were well settled in their colleges and universities. I could then go and engage in a political election process of APNA. Oh, I forgot to mention, I also served, King Edward Alumni Association, both as all as a treasurer, secretary, and then I was the president of Kemkana, which is the Alumni Association of King Edward. But so that was something I did. But in 2017, I decided I was going to run for the elections of UPNA president. And thankfully, I won. I was president elect last year. I'm president this year. Uh, and no one year is similar. This year, we ended up having COVID. We started the year off really well by a trip to Islamabad in March, where we launched the family medicine, training program, because we realized that primary care was a critical need for Pakistan. Uh, Countries like Sri Lanka have much better health statistics because they focused on primary care, whereas in Pakistan, all the money, all the focus is on specialty care. People come to the, tertiary care hospitals from their primary care needs, etc. So primary care is neglected in Pakistan. So in March, we started the initiative of developing primary care across Pakistan. We started off the year really well, but come March, where by the time we returned, COVID had taken root across the world. Uh, all our meetings had to go online. We could not meet, but the APNA membership, was able to raise more than $1 million, and the bulk of which was spent in Pakistan giving both food aid and personal protective equipment. And then in those days when the oxygen supplies were running low, we supplied oxygen concentrators and tanks all over Pakistan. Uh, Through the floods in Karachi, we have been providing food aid to the afflicted people. Uh, so we have been working, providing first, relief to the people affected with COVID and then with floods. Our educational programs are going strong. We have launched Apna Merit Academy, which is an online long distance learning portal where we are running all our courses on various fields, including family medicine, cardiology, neurology, and it has tremendous potential, and we will be able to make those changes. So I feel really good about what we have been able to achieve in spite of COVID. It's no use, crying over spilled milk, because we have been able to turn this catastrophe into an opportunity where our engagement with Pakistan has become much more intense. We have all learned how to connect with each other over Zoom, over different devices, so that we can work. We've learned to work collaboratively across, countries. In many of our educational programs, we have physicians, groups like the Northern European Pakistani physicians and physicians from United Kingdom, as well as Australian physicians collaborating. So we've made the world smaller because our goals are the same: to help Pakistan develop all the medical faculties and facilities in all important fields, and make a sustained change and improvement across all areas of Pakistan. So I think that has provided At the end of the day, Corona has made it possible for me to interact with all of you. It wouldn't have been possible before. We always relied on going physically to a place and presenting. And now we know that the world is a small place and everybody has computer and internet, and we can actually engage in a dialogue and conversation. So, I mean, I don't know how long I've talked with, but I think the spark.
You still have a couple of minutes, Professor
Okay,
Usmani.
thank you so much, Dr. Shaina. So, I, I think the spark for leadership, uh, it's not because you want to be a leader that you are a leader. I think the important thing is to have ideas that you want to implement. Opportunities present themselves. The thing is, you have to work hard. You have to focus. You have to know that don't listen to naysayers. If people think things can't be done, no, they can be done. You just have to focus and find ways for delivering your goals. And leadership is not giving up. I think that is the most important lesson. You always find a way. If you think what you are doing has meaning, as is important, it is not about self projection, but about the actual goals that you have set yourself. And then in all our lives, there are opportunities. I think there is no good time for taking on an opportunity. There is no time for, I'm married, I'm going to have children, so I'm going to look after the children and then I'll go into a professional life. It doesn't happen that way, because in this game of professional women, you are not competing against other women. You are competing for positions against men who don't have the responsibility of family and children, etc. So you have to do 150% of the work that they do, because there is no compromise. You have to be performing professionally as good as them, and the children grow up in spite of yourself. Maybe you would be a better mother, but helicopter mothers don't help the children develop into independent, problem solvers that professional women end up having their children develop, because they have to fend for themselves by and large. You have to be friends with your children, but you don't have to run their lives for them. Your first priority has always got to be what you can do. And if your goals are bigger than your family, then the family will come along with you. I think that is a very important thing as a woman to realize. Don't listen to other people. Think. You are all in universities and professional colleges. Think what you are going to do as a profession and be passionate about your work, and things will happen how you want them to happen. So that's my advice, and that's what I would like to share. Nobody has it easy. There are always struggles. There are always people who will put down women for their abilities. You have to show them that you are more organized, smarter, leaner, and more determined than everybody around, and you will achieve your goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Usmani. Wonderful hearing your journey and what you had to go through. We will be taking a couple of questions. Sadia, do we have questions for Professor Usmani? I have a couple written down myself, but I think we'll give students the chance to come up with questions or observations on Professor Usmani's talk. Sadia, are you around? So if there are students or faculty members or people from the audience who would like to ask questions, could you unmute yourself and raise the question? Professor Usmani, you value your Pakistani origin, and you have made sure that your children do the same. Um, what do you think is primarily responsible for the strong bond that you have with Pakistan and which makes you come back again and again and want to do more for medical education in general, medical education in particular, and for Pakistanis in general?
So I grew up on stories of sacrifice that my parents and their generation made for the creation of Pakistan. So even though they were first generation Pakistanis, they were so actively involved in Pakistan and I'm so thankful for all that Pakistan has given to us. My daughter went to medical school here in United States, and she has a debt of $500,000 from her medical education. I went to school basically free. Pakistani medical education is so heavily subsidized. The government pays for us to be physicians. And I actually got a merit scholarship all 5 years of my medical school. So I was paid to go to medical school. I think I owe everything to Pakistan, to whom, who I am where I am because of Pakistan, not in spite of Pakistan. And I think the love for Pakistan, not just based on the sacrifices my parents' generation made and the opportunities presented to me, are the people of Pakistan. You know, I take care of cancer patients both here and I have done it in Pakistan. But the kind of Walehana pyar that I got from Pakistan, people are so warm, they love so selflessly. They are, that kind of connection with patients. Even though I have grateful and thankful patients in United States, but I'm actually doing my job for them, even though the type of care I'm giving them here versus what I was doing in Pakistan is similar. The gratitude that I got from Pakistan, one time, just a small snippet, Dr. Shaina, uh, a few years after I had left Pakistan, I was visiting and I was in Fortress Stadium walking. This woman, out of the blue, this woman in a burqa came and she ran and held my feet. And I said, please, please, छोड़ दे मुझे. I thought कि वो भिखारी है, को पैसा लेना चाहती है. वो कहने लगे, डॉक्टर साहब, आपने मेरे बेटे को बचाया है. मैं आपके लिए तहज्जुद के बाद हर रोज दुआ करती हूँ. अल्लाह आपको हमेशा रखे. मैं आपका शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहती थी. एक दफा मैं लाहौर में थी, and this is years after I left. Another time I was driving on the canal, and the car had stopped in traffic, and the windows were open. It was summer. I think I was volunteering at Children's Hospital Lahore in the pediatric oncology unit, and खिड़की से ढेरों फूल फेंके गए. मैंने कहा, मैंने नहीं खरीदने फूल, जैसे वो फूल बेचने वाले होते हैं. कहेंगे नहीं, ये तो हम आपको दे रहे हैं क्योंकि आपने हमारे बेटे को बचाया. Random person. Things like that don't happen anywhere else but in Pakistan. People love if somebody takes care of them, they love you for life. There are prayers with me from people of Pakistan that I cannot forget. As I said, that was the mountain I climbed, and I'm so very proud of my work that I did in Pakistan. And it solidified my love for Pakistan and the Pakistani people, and my obligation to Pakistani people to help them whichever way I can, a long distance that it may be.
Ma'am, I want to say something.
G. Aisha, go ahead.
Naheed Baji, Assalamu alaikum. I knew you personally. You and Dr. Asma Usmani both are well. I really appreciate you, your efforts, and you and Asma Baji did a lot in the field of medicine, and you both are my inspiration.
Thank you so much, Aisha. As I said, it's a mother. My mother, who served Rawalpindi for all her life, and she has been our inspiration. She inspired all three of us. We are three
Yes,
sisters.
ma'am. I knew her also.
Right. So Rana Akbar was one of she was an allergist immunologist. She also worked in Pakistan briefly, but was based in Michigan, and she was another president of APNA, 12, 17 years ago. She passed away. My sister, Asma Usmani, has devoted her life to the people of Pindi. She settled in Rawalpindi and has worked as a gynecologist there, was a professor and is a professor there of obstetrics gynecology, has trained numerous people and has treated millions of women in Pakistan. She continues to provide selfless service to Rawalpindi. Thank you, Aisha.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you
Lovely
so
to
much.
know that you are Asma Osmani's sister. She's a good friend. But I don't want to hog the time. Do we have any more questions or comments from the audience? Just a very professional academic question, Professor Usmani. You appear to have made it to professorship in a very short period of time. Generally, it takes a lifetime to make it to be professor, and at such a wonderful, reputable university. What do you credit this phenomenal rise to?
So, when I went to Pakistan, I was told by many of my mentors that I was giving up, that I was sacrificing my career for the move to Pakistan. Strangely enough, my work in Pakistan helped me. They really felt that the program, they could look at it and see that I delivered something that was hugely important, and that I could do work under the most resource constrained environment. Uh, I think it was getting published, meeting all the criteria that are there, establishing new programs. Uh, so when I came to UMass, it is a small, relatively medium-sized pediatric oncology program. As soon as I came, I realized that while they were oncologists, there was a hemophilia program, there was a low white cell program, there was all different specialty programs. But sickle cell patients, a disease of anemia that affects primarily children of color, was not being handled in a systematic manner. different physicians were handling a handful of patients everywhere. So I said, why don't I take that on? Now, I think of myself primarily as an oncologist, not a hematologist, but that was a population that was being ignored. So I set up a comprehensive sickle cell program, was the first thing I did within a couple of years of starting my career at UMass. That was hugely successful. I, increased the sickle cell patient population to hundreds and made it very systematic. So then, because of my experience in Pakistan, and I think, what I was doing at Shaukat Khanam, I was asked by the chair of pediatrics to establish palliative care in our university for pediatrics. So I looked at it, thought about it, formed a palliative care committee, which is end of life care and symptom management, holistic care. Then I said, I need to, get more information. So I enrolled in courses and decided to appear for board examination for palliative care because I wanted to have the credentials. If I'm going to lead something, I need credentials for it. So I successfully cleared the board and I established palliative care at UMass. The third thing, and most of the work in palliative care, besides patient care, is educating both the residents and the medical students about palliative care. So during one of our palliative care, lectures, a couple of medical students approached me and asked me if there was some project they could do with me. So I had been thinking about missed opportunities and creative way of blending clinical care with the student body. So I came up with a program called Sidekicks, and you can
Mhm.
Google it.
Right.
In this program, my concept was to match first year incoming medical students who are totally involved in basic sciences. They don't have any clinical exposure. So this was also in, I think, 2009. And you match them with a child with a life threatening illness to be their buddies, to be their friends, to provide social support, exposing the medical students what it takes for a patient and family to go through complicated therapies while they deal with a life threatening illness. So, that program I have led since 2009 to now. It has grown tremendously. It has been adopted in many other universities like New York University, Boston University, Albany University, Cooper Medical School. Other programs are adapting it because it exposes the medical students longitudinally to the suffering of the child and the family, going through, for example, cancer therapy, cystic fibrosis, renal transplant, all kinds of diseases that they don't get. The students love it. The parents are so thankful because, why do you go to medical school? Because of your compassionate nature. So it builds on their empathy and, this kind of gives them experience that they can later incorporate into their professional lives. So that was the next thing that I did. All these factors, as I went along, contributed to my CV that led me from assistant to associate and then a full professor. I was not doing bench research, but I think I created programs that had a deep impact on the medical school itself and is changing the exposing medical students to an aspect of medicine that they don't learn except through experiences that most of us learn while we are practicing physician. So I'm providing that while they are students.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor Usmani. We did have a couple of other questions, but we're running out of time. let me take this opportunity to formally thank you on behalf of Fatima Jinnah Women University and particularly the media cell, which has helped to organize this webinar. For me, this webinar has added a lot to my knowledge, and I'm sure I speak for the rest of the audience and the participants in the webinar also when I say that this has been a very learning and a very motivating session. So, thank you very much, Professor Usmani, for sparing time for us. And we will be putting up this webinar on the Fatma Jinnah Women University website and the Mohtarma Fatma Jinnah web page. And we will send you a link for that. And I hope that that will be an addition to your already wonderful CV. So thank you very much, and we hope to meet in healthier, safer times.
Thank you, Dr. Shahina. It was wonderful reminiscing and talking and reviewing my life. I hope some of you got inspiration from it, or gave you determination to proceed with your careers. Dr. Shahina, I'm more than willing to have students email me if they have any questions. Please feel free to share the email. I again thank you and Professor Saima for giving me an opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we would love to host you when you next come to Pakistan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sava. Allah Hafiz.